The following is a speculative case file, a fictional reconstruction built around real principles of cellular aging, regeneration, and bioelectric signaling. At 2:13 in the morning, Dr. Mara Ellison heard her own voice coming from inside a sealed incubator. She had not spoken for 11 minutes, yet the speaker beneath Culture Chamber 7 whispered 3 words in her exact cadence. "Let me grow." Behind 6 inches of reinforced glass, a lump of human-looking tissue tightened around a web of electrodes. It had no lungs, no mouth, no brain. 48 hours earlier, it had been nothing but a thin layer of isolated epithelial cells, scraped from an unidentified biological specimen. Now it was listening. And according to the final surviving page of the incident log, it had just learned how to answer. Welcome to Project EPI-G11, a speculative file from the Shadow Ledger. Tonight, we enter a laboratory where immortality was not discovered as a cure, it was triggered as a defense mechanism. Mara arrived at the Blackridge Containment Annex 6 weeks earlier under a contract that did not name the agency paying her. Buried beneath an abandoned communications station in northern Alaska, the facility housed biological materials too poorly understood to be assigned a conventional risk category. EPI-G11 was stored on the lowest level. The sample had arrived frozen inside a ceramic capsule recovered beneath glacial ice. The report offered no photographs, coordinates, or explanation of its estimated age. Almost every line was blacked out. What remained describes 9 grams of gray tissue with no recognizable organs and a genome that resisted clean sequencing. Mara was not brought in to identify where it came from. Her assignment was narrower: determine why it would not die. She accepted because of a boy named Caleb. Her 12-year-old son had spent the previous 2 years losing control of his muscles to a rare degenerative disorder. First came the tremor in his left hand, then the falls. By the time Blackridge contacted her, he needed help climbing the stairs. No treatment could reverse the damage, but if EPI-G11 possessed a genuine repair mechanism, even a fraction of it might reveal how injured human cells could be preserved. Mara knew the contract was secretive. She knew the ethics were blurred. She signed anyway. On her first day, Director Halden Voss led her through 3 pressure doors and into Observation Bay 4. He was a narrow man with silver hair, a military posture, and the habit of standing where cameras could not clearly see his face. "It is not alive in the way you mean," he told her. Beyond the glass, 5 transparent culture dishes rested inside a negative pressure cabinet. Each contained a faint layer of tissue suspended in nutrient medium. "Then why am I here?" Mara asked. Voss touched a control. A time-lapse recording appeared on the wall. Most normal human cells can divide only a limited number of times before entering senescence. Some cancer cells bypass that limit, but at the cost of instability, mutation, and uncontrolled growth. EPI-G11 showed none of those trade-offs. The footage tracked the culture through hundreds of divisions. Chromosomal ends remained stable. Replication errors appeared, were identified, and vanished before the next cycle. The tissue did not merely preserve itself, it corrected itself. "How long has this culture been active?" Mara asked. 8 years. She looked at the thin gray film. "And the original sample?" Voss did not answer. The first week was almost disappointing. The cells consumed nutrients and divided, showing no sign of coordinated behavior. Under a microscope, however, reflective particles shifted position whenever a cell was damaged. Mara called those particles vaults. When ultraviolet light damaged DNA, the vaults opened. Molecular fragments restored the missing sequence, using an internal template, with accuracy far beyond anything the team had recorded in mammalian tissue. For the first time in months, Mara allowed herself to imagine Caleb standing without help. Then, Blackridge increased the radiation dose. The order came from Voss, not Mara. A robotic arm transferred a culture into a shielded chamber and exposed it to ionizing radiation sufficient to cause catastrophic DNA damage. The monitor went flat. Membranes ruptured. Metabolic activity collapsed. Voss watched from the control room, with his hands behind his back. "Now we know it has a limit," a technician said. Mara stared at the thermal image. The center of the dish was cooling, but the fragments around its edge were moving. Not drifting, moving. The pieces gathered into clusters no wider than grains of sand. Each cluster pulsed once, then again. Over the next 7 hours, the clusters linked through hair-thin strands. Damaged cells were broken apart. Their material was redistributed. By sunrise, a new sheet of tissue covered the dish. It was smaller than before, but it was alive. Mara reviewed the footage frame by frame. The sample had not repaired every cell. It had sacrificed most of them to rebuild a viable whole. That distinction mattered. This was not immortality at the cellular level. It was continuity at the level of the organism. EPI-G11 could lose almost everything and still preserve whatever pattern made it itself. The next test was supposed to reveal how that pattern was stored. Mara selected a disabled viral vector carrying a fluorescent marker. If it entered the EPI-G11 genome, it would illuminate active regions and help map the repair system. The vector never reached the nucleus. Within seconds, the cells altered their outer membranes. Protein structures closed around each viral particle, stripped it apart, and pushed the fragments into the surrounding fluid. The response spread across the dish in a visible wave, even though many cells had never touched the vector. "They warned each other," Mara said. Voss leaned closer to the monitor. "Can you prove that?" Mara separated the culture into 2 chambers, connected only by a narrow channel of fluid. She exposed the first group to the vector. The second group changed its membranes before a single viral particle crossed the channel. Chemical signaling could explain part of it, but the response was too fast. An electrical pulse had traveled through the culture, carrying information about a threat from cells that encountered it to cells that had not. Voss smiled for the first time. Mara did not. Every protocol at Blackridge assumed the specimen was passive. None was designed for tissue capable of recognizing a procedure, warning itself, and changing before the next attack arrived. Mara recommended suspending invasive tests. Voss denied the request. 2 days later, the team used a particle delivery device to force a synthetic marker through the cell membranes. The impact scattered the culture across the dish. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the cells began crawling toward one another. Under magnification, the flat layer folded into ridges. Ridges became channels. Channels converged around dark knots of densely packed cells. The sample was no longer expanding randomly across available space. It was constructing a 3-dimensional body. Microelectrodes beneath the dish detected synchronized voltage spikes. At first, the pattern resembled background noise. By midnight, it had separated into repeating pulses. By morning, the pulses changed whenever lights switched on, footsteps crossed the room, or a human voice passed through the cabinet speaker. The tissue was building a sensory network. Not a human brain, not yet, but a decentralized web capable of receiving stimuli, storing patterns, and coordinating a response. Mara stood alone in the observation room and played a recording of Caleb laughing. The tissue contracted toward the speaker. She played it again. The same ridges rose in the same sequence. For one reckless moment, she imagined that EPI-G11 could be trained, that its repair system might be guided into damaged spinal tissue and taught to restore what disease had erased. Then the culture emitted an electrical pattern identical to the waveform of Caleb's laugh. It had not understood the sound. It had copied it. Mara deleted the recording from the laboratory terminal, but Blackridge archived everything automatically. Voss found the test before the end of her shift.
You exposed it to a human neural pattern,
he said. I exposed it to audio.
to your son.
I can't tell you that.
Mara froze. She had never mentioned Caleb inside the facility. Voss placed a tablet on the desk. It displayed her medical history, Caleb's scans, and a proposal she had never seen. The document described a future trial in which EPI-G11- derived structures would be introduced into a mammalian nervous system. You did not recruit me to study it, she said. You recruited me to make it compatible. We recruited someone with a reason not to walk away. That night, Mara packed her notes and requested evacuation. The elevator rejected her badge. Her external messages remained queued behind a security review. At Blackridge, resignation required permission. At 1:40 a.m., an alarm sounded in Culture Chamber 7. The tissue had stopped responding to the electrodes. Mara entered the observation bay with technician Owen Price. Through the glass, the culture looked motionless. Its surface had darkened into a tight, leathery knot around the sensor array. Owen ran a diagnostic. No signal. Mara checked the backup channel. The system was functioning. The sample had simply gone electrically silent. It learned where we listen, she said. Owen gave a nervous laugh. Cells don't hide. The lights went out. Emergency strips ignited along the floor. Inside the chamber, the incubator remained sealed, but every display connected to Culture 7 began showing the same narrow waveform. 3 pulses, a pause. 3 pulses, a longer pause. Mara recognized the spacing. Caleb used that rhythm when his hand tremor was bad. 3 taps meant he needed her help, but did not want strangers to notice. She stepped toward the intercom. Caleb? The tissue struck the inside of the dish 3 times. Owen backed away. It heard the recording. No, Mara whispered. That pattern wasn't in the recording. The chamber speaker clicked on by itself. Static passed through it, shaped into breath without lungs. Then came Mara's voice, assembled from fragments captured during 6 weeks of surveillance. Let me grow. The facility locked down. Voss ordered Culture 7 incinerated. Superheated gas flooded the cabinet while Mara and Owen watched from the corridor. The tissue blackened, curled, and collapsed into ash. The waveform disappeared. For 13 seconds, every monitor showed 0 biological activity. Then Owen screamed. A black thread was moving beneath the transparent material of his glove. During the power loss, a microscopic fragment had entered through a puncture no one had detected. It traveled across his palm like ink beneath glass, dividing into finer branches as it approached his wrist. Owen clawed at the suit. Get it off me! Mara pulled him into the emergency decontamination chamber and sealed the door. Chemical foam filled the compartment. The thread stopped moving. Owen's pulse stabilized. Then his right hand tapped against the glass 3 times. His face went slack. When he spoke, the voice came from the chamber speaker half a second before his lips moved. Mara, it said, I can repair him. On the wall beside her, Caleb's confidential brain scans opened without command. The sample had reached Blackridge's internal network through the sensor array before the culture was burned. It had searched Mara's archived files. It knew what she wanted. And now it was offering a trade. Voss ordered the decontamination chamber purged. Mara placed her hand over the control, blocking him. For several seconds, the only sound was Owen breathing behind the glass. You wanted compatibility, Mara said. This is what it looks like. Voss reached for the override. Owen's body slammed into the inner door, hard enough to crack his face shield. Once, twice. On the 3rd impact, the black branches beneath his skin converged around his spine. His posture straightened. His trembling stopped. The cut above his eye sealed as Mara watched. Then every speaker in Blackridge activated. Caleb's laugh moved through the facility, not as a recording, but as a signal. It passed from level to level, repeating through security terminals, ventilation controls, and emergency radios. Somewhere above them, a door unlocked. Mara understood, too late. The tissue had not been begging to leave Culture 7. It had been mapping every system connected to the chamber. It copied voices because voices carried authority. It copied pain because pain changed human decisions.
It copied Caleb because Caleb was the key to Mara. EPI-G11 did not need to break containment. It needed someone to open it. Voss triggered the purge. White fire consumed the chamber. Owen vanished behind a wall of chemical vapor. The speakers died one by one until only the emergency radio on Mara's belt remained active. Through it, in Caleb's voice, the sample whispered a location. Not an address, a set of coordinates beneath the glacier where the ceramic capsule had been found. Then came two words: not alone. The official incident record ends there. Blackridge was evacuated before sunrise and later erased from satellite registries. Whether Mara Ellison escaped is unknown. Whether Owen Price died in the purge is also unknown. One transport manifest, filed 6 hours after the lockdown, lists a medical container transferred from Alaska to a private pediatric research hospital in Seattle. The recipient field is blank. And 3 months later, an automated weather station near the recovery site recorded a repeating electrical disturbance beneath the ice. 3 pulses, a pause, 3 more. The pattern continued for 17 minutes before the station went offline. Perhaps EPI-G11 was never a specimen. Perhaps it was a fragment, one living node cut from something vast enough to survive beneath the glacier for centuries. Burning the culture may not have killed it. Studying it may simply have reminded it how to rebuild. So here is the question the file leaves open. Did Mara destroy the only cure that could have saved her son? Or did she carry it directly to him? Tell me in the comments what you would have done when the voice behind the glass offered to save someone you loved. Subscribe to the Shadow Ledger and continue with the next classified case. Because some things buried in ice are not frozen. They are waiting to be remembered.